An act of questioning is also present in photographic works that reference hair as a means of protest. And we already heard about the assimilation and or the turn from assimilated hair to protest hair today. Behind me, you can see 3 photographs of the series Intern by Hoda Afshar, a photographer joining us from Melbourne tonight. Welcome, Hoda. We're excited to hear more about your work.
So much for having me today. I would go straight into sharing my screen. Let me see. Can you see my screen now? Okay. The project I'm going to talk about today is a project that I made in 2003 about the uprisings of women life freedom in Iran, my home country. My practice and background, to give you a little bit of information about myself, is that I predominantly work with moving image and photography. And most of my work, I would say I see it as a response to different forms of violence, and is a kind of a rethinking of representation of different subjects that are either misrepresented through photography historically, or made invisible, their experiences and so on. So a lot of my work engages with social political issues of the time, and I respond to it as it relates to my own experiences and so on. I grew up in Iran and studied in Iran, and I moved to Australia at the age of 23 in 2007, and I've been practicing and working and living here since. But a lot of my work is made in Iran, and a lot of it is a response to different experiences of people of my community and others that are similar, that I make here in collaboration with them. I work with the genre of documentary mostly, and the reason why I responded to the uprisings in Iran is because a lot of the images that were coming out of Iran during the woman life freedom movement had a very similar quality to the work that I've been trying to make over the years. And there was this like the difference that I was seeing in the images was that people were using performance and art as a way of as a mechanism of remembrance and defiance. For those of you who don't know, the uprisings in Iran was a response to the killing of Mahsa Jina Amini, a Kurdish Iranian woman who was murdered at the hands of the morality police in Iran for not wearing her hijab properly, which led to 5-6 months of endless uprisings across the country, and also the diaspora, Iranian diaspora outside. And what was happening on the streets, women were making these images, anonymous images, that was showing their rebelliousness. They were staging their protest for the camera and for the gaze of those who were looking at them from the outside world. One of the projects at the beginning of the uprisings I did was to curate these images made by anonymous protesters on the streets that had very similar sort of aesthetic to it, and similar gesture, body language. And I, the first time I was invited by Museum Quartier in Vienna to make something for the billboards, which was at the beginning of the uprisings. And I used it as a way of sharing the social media images that the anonymous photographers were sharing. So using those platforms as a way of, getting their voices out into the public. Those images were later showed in gallery context and so on. So that was the beginning as a kind of a response. And one of those interesting elements that I saw during the uprisings that was being repeated by women, was the act of plaiting hair, that has its roots in Kurdish women's struggle, decades-long struggle, that women, before going into fight with the Islamic State in the mountains, plait each other's hair and sing Zan Jian Azadi, which means Zan Zendegi Azadi in Farsi, woman life freedom. that movement and aesthetic and slogan found its way into the protests in Iran because Jina was a Kurdish woman and the uprisings started in Kurdistan. So I was looking at those images that women were risking their lives basically on the streets, performing this rebellious act and performing their sisterhood connection and using the repetition as a way of decentralizing the protest. And it was different people doing similar things in similar different places and contexts across the country. So it takes this sort of idea of authorship out of it as well. And I was quite fascinated by this element of performance that and repetition as a protest strategy. So you'd see women from high schools to universities all taking their headscarves out and protesting with their backs facing the camera. One of the other elements that was repeated during the protest was the act of releasing white doves in the sky, which was a kind of a response to the killing of the youth on the streets by the Iranian regime, that they were shooting at the young protesters, and a large number of young protesters were arrested and killed on the streets. And at the funerals, people were releasing white doves in the sky. So this was something that a lot of us took to the rallies that we were holding in diaspora and in different countries. And we were also repeating the same acts during the protest and rallies here. So what I wanted to do was this idea of using these symbols from the images that were coming out of Iran. And during that period, me and my friends were also protesting on the streets every Saturday, like many other Iranians outside of Iran, to show our solidarity and to be able to raise their voice and help them to get the message out. Some of the aesthetic decisions I made for making the images was again taken from the pictures of like Kurdish women who fight, in the mountains of Rojava, across the borders of Kurdistan. And so a lot of it is often in the mountains and against the sky. So I wanted to find, a similar sort of aesthetic. I used this sky as the backdrop for my images. These are some of the backstage shots of myself and the collaborator, which are collaborators, my friends, and also the doves. And we found this location on the rooftop of a building facing the ocean. And it was a really windy sort of day. As you can see, I can play this. I had to, lock my camera gear on, on the table to be able to protect it from the wind. And so, yeah, we tried to kind of repeat the same sort of acts, because for me, the plaiting hair has a long history of women's struggle, like from the Black women across America to Asia Pacific and so on. So there is this symbolism of, sisterhood and women's struggle. It's a universal element. And also the doves as like to capture the contrast of the emotions we all shared during that period. The hopefulness and resistance and bonding and connecting, and also the mournfulness that both the dove and the hare is like representing in these images. This is a kind of a way of paying tribute to the act, and also solidarity, using art as a form of solidarity. I should end it here. I think I reached my 7 minutes.